The moment Amina stepped out of the barracks, Uche walked beside her, his voice soft but firm. "Let me take you home," he said. Amina snorted. She turned to him with cold eyes. "Did I beg you to save me?" she scoffed. "Mind your business. Just because of this small favor, you want to follow me home?" Uchi sighed, watching her with pity. But before he could say another word, Amina spun around and walked away. Her steps were heavy with anger, her fists clenched. She didn't care about Uchi. She didn't care about the barracks. But there was one thing she did care about: revenge. 1 week later, the school had been peaceful for days. Some people whispered that Amina had run away, but they were wrong. She came back. The moment she stepped through the school gate, the air changed. The students stopped talking. The teachers held their breath. But Amina didn't care. She walked with her head high, her jaw tight. She had a mission. The soldiers had humiliated her. They had made her suffer. And who had called them in the first place? The teachers. They had stood by. They had done nothing. Now she would make them pay. That very morning, the news spread like wildfire. Amina is back. She's going to finish what she started. She will destroy this school. Panic filled the air. Parents withdrew their children. Teachers packed their bags and left. Some who stayed refused to enter their classrooms. They avoided Amina like a disease. She was no longer just a student. She was a threat. And this time, there was no stopping her. Amina had returned to school, but she wasn't here to learn. She came to cause havoc. She refused to do her assignments. She ignored teachers like they were ghosts. She walked through the school like a lion in the jungle, daring anyone to cross her path. And nobody did, until Uche. The core member had watched her from afar, refusing to give up on her. That day, after class, Uche called her name. "Amina." She didn't answer. She sat at the back of the class, resting her legs on the desk, chewing gum, staring out the window. Uche sighed and walked up to her. "Where's your assignment?" he asked, his voice calm. Amina didn't move. "I said, where's your assignment?" Uche repeated. Slowly, she turned to face him. Her eyes were cold. "Leave me alone." Uche crossed his arms. "No, I won't." The classroom went silent. Nobody ever challenged Amina. Nobody. Some teachers who had stayed behind peeked from the staff room. Other core members whispered, "Uche, leave her alone. You don't know what you're doing. She's dangerous." But Uche ignored them all. He pulled a chair and sat in front of her. "Why do you keep fighting everyone?" he asked. "Why do you hate yourself so much?" Amina's face twitched. "Hate myself?" she scoffed. "What nonsense are you saying?" Uche shook his head. "I see it, Amina. You're not angry at the world. You're angry at yourself. You're pushing everyone away because you don't know how to let anyone in." Amina's fingers curled into fists. She didn't like his words. The core members shook their heads. "Uche, stop. Just leave her. She'll only hurt you." But Uche stood his ground. "You know what?" he said finally. "Maybe I was wrong to help you. Maybe I shouldn't have begged those soldiers to let you go. Maybe you deserve to suffer because you refused to change." That was it. Amina lost it. She shot up from her seat so fast her chair crashed to the ground. And before Uche could blink, kabam! Her fist slammed into his mouth. The class gasped. Uche stumbled back, blood on his lip. The students expected him to run, to wipe his mouth and leave, like everyone before him. But he didn't. He looked at her, his eyes filled with sadness. not fear. He wiped the blood from his lip and said, "I'm not going anywhere, Amina." The classroom was silent. Nobody had ever done this before. Nobody had stood up to Amina, not with fists, but with kindness. Amina clenched her jaw. Why wasn't he afraid? Why wasn't he running? For the first time, someone had faced her and stayed. Amina sat alone that evening, staring at the setting sun. The village was quiet, but her mind was loud. Uche's words refused to leave her head. Why do you keep fighting? Why do you hate yourself so much? I'm not going anywhere, Amina. She clenched her fists, but for the first time, there was no one to punch. For days, she avoided him. For weeks, she stayed away. But no matter how far she went, his words followed her. Then, one day, Uchi found her sitting under a mango tree, alone. He sat beside her, silent for a while. Then softly, he spoke. "You don't have to live like this, Amina," she scoffed. "Like what?" "Like a storm with no peace," he said. She rolled her eyes, but this time, there was no anger. Uche turned to face her fully. "I can take you to the city," he said. "If you change, if you stop fighting, if you try to be better, I will help you." Amina frowned. "Why do you care so much?" Uche smiled a little. "Because I know you're not a bad person. You're just hurt. And I know that if you allow yourself, you can be more." Amina looked away, swallowing hard. Nobody had ever spoken to her like this. Nobody had ever told her she could be something else. That night, she couldn't sleep. For the first time in her life, she asked herself, "What if I stop?" And the next morning, something shocking happened. Amina was the first person to arrive at school. Nobody had ever seen her come this early. She was always the last to arrive, strolling in whenever she pleased. But today, as the sun was still rising, Amina was already seated in class. The students stood outside, peeping through the gate. "She's here too early. Maybe she's waiting for someone to beat. I'm not entering first. You go." Nobody wanted to step inside. They thought it was a trap. But after a while, when nothing happened, they slowly entered. Amina sat quietly, staring at her desk. No threats, no fights, just silence. And that was the first sign. Something had changed. The next shock came when the teacher gave an assignment. Amina, who had never done an assignment in her life, picked up a pen and started writing. "Did you see that?" one student whispered. "She's actually doing work." At first, people thought she was joking. But the next day, when the teacher asked for the assignments, Amina submitted hers, properly done. Nobody could believe it. Uchi noticed her efforts. He saw that she was trying. So after school, he offered to tutor her. At first, Amina rolled her eyes. "I don't need help," she said. But Uchi insisted. "Just try," he said. And for the first time in her life, Amina studied. She listened. She took notes. She asked questions. She still got frustrated. She still felt like giving up. But Uchi never let her quit. Then the final test came. Exams. Before, Amina didn't care about exams. She either cheated, slept through them, or failed. But this time, she studied hard. She did her best. And when the results came out, for the first time ever, Amina passed. She didn't repeat the class. For the first time in her life, she had achieved something with her own effort. And that was the moment she knew she could become more. Slowly, the students stopped fearing her. Slowly, the teachers stopped avoiding her. No more punching, no more threats, no more disrespect. And when Uchi saw her efforts, he knew she was ready. With his help, Amina got admission into a university and then moved to the city. Her journey was just beginning. The city was nothing like Agilit village. It was big, fast, noisy. Cars honked, people rushed, buildings stretched into the sky. For the first time, Amina felt small. She wasn't the strongest here. She wasn't the scariest. Nobody knew her. Nobody feared her. She was just another student. And for the first time, she had to learn. City life was not easy. At the university, there were rules. She had to wake up early. She had to submit assignments. She had to respect lecturers. No more shouting. No more fighting. At first, it was hard. One day, a student bumped into her in the hallway. "Are you blind?" she snapped, her fists clenching. The student just apologized and walked away. No fear, no panic, no running. Amina stood there, confused. Was this how normal people acted? Slowly, she started adjusting. She met kind students. She joined study groups. She worked hard. And with Uchi always encouraging her, she kept pushing forward. Years passed. Amina, the girl who once fought teachers, the girl who once ruled Agilet with fists, graduated with honors. But she didn't stop there. She wanted more. She wanted to be great. So she pursued her master's degree. She was no longer the troublemaker of Agilit. She was now Amina, the scholar. Amina had changed. The wild, stubborn girl from Agilit was gone. In her place was a strong, educated woman, a woman who had learned, grown, and conquered her past. And through it all, Uchi was there. He had seen her at her worst. He had believed in her when no one else did. He had pushed her to be better. And somewhere along the way, Amina fell in love. At first, she didn't understand it. Uche was just her teacher, her mentor, her guide. But he was also her friend, her rock, her safe place. One evening, as they sat outside after a long day, Uche looked at her and smiled. "You know, I'm proud of you," he said. Amina smirked. "You should be. I'm a genius now," he chuckled. "You've come a long way, Amina." She looked into his eyes, and for the first time, she saw what had been there all along. Love. Not pity, not fear. Love. And that night, under the city lights, they both knew they were meant to be. Amina and Uchi got married. They built a home filled with peace, not war. With love, not fear. With kindness, not pain. And Amina didn't just stop at being a wife. She became a lecturer, a respected, admired, and loved lecturer. She saw troubled students, the ones who reminded her of herself, and she helped them. "I know what it's like to be angry," she would tell them. "I know what it's like to feel lost. But trust me, you can change." I did. Her story became a lesson. Her past became her power. And in the end, Amina had not just changed her life, she had changed others too. One day Amina returned to Agilet village. The road to Agilet village felt different now. Years ago, Amina had walked these dusty paths as a terror. The girl who fought everyone. The girl who feared no one. But today, she was coming back as a different person. She sat quietly in the car as it rolled into the village. The trees swayed gently. The air smelled of roasted corn and firewood, and the voices of playing children filled the streets. She smiled. Home. As she stepped into the school compound, everything stopped. The students stared. The teachers whispered. Some of the villagers who had once feared her peeked from a distance. Is that really Amina? The same girl who beat teachers? She looked so different. She walked forward, dressed in elegant clothes, her posture straight, her presence commanding, not from fear, but from respect. She reached the front of the assembly and stood before them all. Then she bowed her head. "I am sorry," she said, her voice steady but full of emotion. "For everything." Nobody spoke. Then a teacher wiped her eyes. A student clutched his chest. Even some of the elders standing nearby nodded in approval. The girl who had once filled Agilet with fear was now filling it with hope. She had changed. She had conquered her past. And at last, Amina had found peace. I hope you enjoyed the story. If so, please like the video, comment what you learned from the tale, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more enchanting tales just like this one. Thank you.